think you lost your love. I saw her yesterday, it's you she's thinking of. And she told me what to say, said she loves you, and you know that can't be bad. She loves you, and you know you should be glad. She said you hurt her so, she almost lost her mind. But now she said she knows you're not the hurting kind. Cause she loves you, and you know that can't be bad. She loves you, and you know you should be glad. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And with a love like that, you know you should be glad. It's up to you. I think it's only fair. Pride can hurt you too. Apologize to her, cause she loves you, and you know that can be bad. She loves you, and you know you should be glad. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And with a love like that, you know you should be glad. With a love like that, you know you should be glad. With a love like that, you know you should be. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So thank you for taking the time, Mr. Freeman.
You're very welcome.
So over the past couple of years, especially up until the past couple of months, especially on the internet, there's been a lot of talk about disclosure. But the thing is, disclosure's been going on forever. I know they've been trying to push will an alien land on the White House lawn?
Yeah, I'm not impressed, and I don't expect official disclosure to happen, frankly. But I will say there has been a change in attitude of the public. You don't hear anybody saying we're the only life around anymore, hardly. And we've gotten wiser with the space satellites able to make measurements that were impossible to dream about not too many years ago. There's been a change in a particularly important aspect. How many solar systems there are, how many planets there are. You know, we used to be able to say, well, this is the only solar system and we're the only planet with water on it and so forth. We're king of the beat, you know. And now with the Kepler space satellite, which is a remarkable device, and some other big telescopes, the latest estimate is that there's between 1 and 1.6 planets per star. So that could be as many as 9, 10, you know. But what that means is in the local neighborhood, within 100 light years of here, there are approximately 10,000 stars. So that means there's someplace between 10,000 and 16,000 planets within a mere 100 light years. It's just down the street. So suddenly, it kind of looks like there's planets all over the place. And it's not a question, do they all have life? That isn't the right question. Do any? You know, as a nuclear guy, you get used to dealing with situations in which the unusual is what's important. Big effort during World War II to separate isotopes of uranium. Because if you want to make a bomb, you better get a lot of U-235. But U-235 only makes up 0.7% of uranium. So we built a facility a mile long to pump uranium hexafluoride gas through little holes in nickel barriers. And because U-235 is a little lighter than U-238, it moves a little faster. And so the building was a mile long. We were using 5% of all the electricity produced in the United States during a war, mind you, to do that in secret. So you say, yeah, I know. It's like the basketball coach. He says, yes, I know most people aren't 7 feet tall. Give me one. Give me one. That's all I need. You know, I don't care about the fact that most aren't. So with flying saucers, yes, most sightings can be explained. So what? It's the ones that can't be that matter. And every large-scale scientific study has produced a substantial number of sightings by good observers, all kinds of good characteristics, that couldn't be explained. On the other hand, the government has constantly put out nonsense. What really drew me into flying saucers, I'd read about 10 books starting in 1958, and I'm at the University of California, Berkeley Library, and I found something that wasn't mentioned in any of the books that I'd read. Project Blue Book, Special Report Number 14, biggest study ever done. Data on 3,201 reports. Charts, tables, graphs, maps. I was in data heaven. The guy who published it... Sorry, we have visitors. Strange-looking visitors. Included the press release. And in the press release, the Secretary of the Air Force was quoted as saying, on the basis of this study, we believe that no objects such as those properly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. That sounds pretty cut and dry. It's a total lie. I had the report. The unknowns weren't 3%. They were 21.5%. And they weren't ones for which there wasn't enough information. That was a separate category, 9.3%.
So why keep all that secret? Why keep that hidden from the public, though?
Well, I can think of a lot of reasons. One important one is the technology one. There have been several crashes on U.S. soil, and probably in the rest of the world too. I know of one in Brazil, and so forth. The first country to be able to duplicate the behavior of flying saucers rules the roost, because they can fly circles around anything we got to fly. So you want to keep it secret. You don't want anybody to know. But also, there's a question of power. Earth is a planet of countries. I think there's 195. I don't know what the latest number is, but if you want power, you have your own country, and you can do as you damn please. And so anything that would force people to start thinking of themselves as earthlings, we are all earthlings, as a matter of fact, is a danger to people who want to stay in power. I mean, is the United States going to say, well, we're going to take a vote? India's got over 1 billion people. The U.S. only 300 million. China's got 1.3 or so billion people. We're not going to say, but let's take an election to see who speaks for the planet. So keeping in power is a natural, it seems to be a natural activity of earthlings. Keep the other guy down, you get strong. So I can understand that. Now, for a while you had to say, well, there were certain religious leaders, some of the fundamentalists, had said, all the intelligent life in the universe is right here on planet Earth, and this UFO stuff is the work of the devil. They don't want to. I've sat on a plane with one and wanted no part of flying saucer. Can't be.
So you think religion still plays a big part in this?
Well, much less than it used to. The Pope has even come out with a couple of statements suggesting that, if aliens wanted, they'd be willing to baptize them. That's very different from saying there ain't none, man. So I think that's backed off. I very rarely hear somebody say we're the only ones anymore. Now, it's tough on man's ego. They like to think we're important, we're special, we're unique. That's an attitude from Earth, if you will. But I see much less of that now than I used to. And I'm glad, because I would like my great-grandson to grow up in a world in which we start thinking of ourselves as earthlings. I mean, when you sit back and you say, that we're spending $1 trillion this year on planet Earth on things military. And there were a lot of kids who died of starvation yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that, and tomorrow, and so forth. It's time we put our resources to a better use than killing each other. And, when people say, well, why would aliens come here? Well, look at our recent history. In World War II, we killed 50 million of our own kind. We destroyed 1,700 cities. After the war, we tested 2,000 nuclear weapons. We're not nice guys. But more important, as soon as you are able to control fission and fusion, atomic bombs, H bombs, you're in a position to go to the stars. If you want to spend the dough, you can go. And if I were an alien, I'd be very worried about having Earthlings out there taking our brand of friendship, which everybody else calls hostility, of course.
Yeah.
So there are reasons for the cover-up, loss of power, fear. You know, people always raise the Orson Welles program. And look, we learned to handle the atomic bomb. It was pretty darn frightening. I was around at the time, and when they tell you, you know, you wipe out half a city with one stinking bomb, you see, we got used gradually to bombs. In World War II, there were bombing raids with more than 500 airplanes dropping bombs as they went along. It's incredible to think about.
Carpet bombing, right?
Well, and fortunately, we were in the United States. We didn't have to worry about it because nobody was going to bomb us. So it said then, you know. It's kind of amazing how wrong we were. In 1948, now the first bombs were set off in 45. 1948, the general who directed the Manhattan Project was asked how long before the Russians have a bomb. The Cold War was already started. And he said, well, you know, they got hurt very badly during the war. Russia lost 20 million people during the war. Their industrial capacity was, and they don't have a means for delivering it. So I'd say probably it'll be 8 years. The very next year, the Russians exploded their first atomic bomb. And yeah, they didn't build a new airplane. We had left the B-29 over there, and they built Chinese copies of our B-29. But we were wrong. What we had was the Ground Observer Corps, because after all, there's nobody who can come bomb us. Whoops! Sorry! You know. So we spent an enormous amount of effort. And we now, hopefully, recognize that there's planets all over the place out there. Some of them probably have life on them. And when you consider that we only discovered the neutron in 1932 and fission and fusion in 1938, I think there's probably somebody who's a little bit ahead of us, 10,000, a million, a billion years.
Do you think we already have the technology to travel the stars and it's being kept secret
No.
and hidden from the people?
Well, I'd put it differently. We know how to do it. I worked on a study of fusion propulsion for deep space travel. Fusion is what goes on in the sun and in all the stars, every single one of them. That's the major source of energy in the universe. In 1962, I worked on a study of fusion propulsion for deep space travel, a $9 million Air Force study at Aerojet General Nucleonics. And the conclusion was that if we want to go to the stars, we can. But it's going to cost a lot of money. And, people don't understand how much money it takes for advanced propulsion systems. When I was working on nuclear airplanes, believe it or not, in 1958 at General Electric, we spent $100 million that year. We employed 3,400 people, of whom 1,100 were engineers and scientists. This wasn't 6 professors and 12 grad students. It was a major, and we never flew a nuclear-powered airplane. We operated jet engines on nuclear power, which is another matter. And we have tested fission rockets. Los Alamos tested the biggest one, less than 8 feet in diameter.
Yeah.
Power level 4,400 megawatts. That's twice the power of Hoover Dam, which is a little bit larger than that. So to say we can is different from saying we will or should, or that there's a good reason for doing that. What you need is motivation. The Navy, for example, under Admiral Hyman Rickover, went for nuclear submarines. And there was objections from the battleship boys. What are you building submarines for? Battleships, power. Well, in World War II, a submarine could stay underwater for a day. Now, with the nuclear-powered submarine, you can stay underwater for years. You can go around the world underwater. which is kind of neat because the other guy doesn't know where you are, so you can fire a rocket against him if he fires rockets against you. Mutually assured destruction, as somebody said. The Navy has built aircraft carriers that can operate for 18 years without refueling. That's a whole new ballgame when it comes to sea battles. You don't need to worry about the tankers and all the rest of that stuff. So nuclear is really the way to go. And if you're going to go to the stars, like I say, well, just to scale it up for you, in 1944, a big bomb was a 10-ton blockbuster, released the energy of 10 tons of dynamite. Make a pretty darn big hole in the ground, make a mess. That was in 44. In 45, first fission bomb, atomic bomb, if you will. Released the energy of 16,000 tons of dynamite. Not 10, 16,000. In 1952, our first H-bomb, fusion device. 10 million tons of dynamite. That's how much energy was released. And the Russians set off one that was 57 million tons of dynamite. Think of that. One stinking bomb. But also think, if you control fusion, you can go to the stars. So why would aliens come here? To quarantine us. We don't want these idiots out there. What have we demonstrated that says anybody would want to have us join them? We're good at killing.
What's your thought on Corey Good and his story?
I haven't really heard a story that I could break up into parts and try to analyze.
Yeah.
I know he's speaking at the MUFON conference coming up in July, I guess it is, in Vegas. And there are other people saying we've already gone to we have bases backside the moon and Mars and Lord knows where else. And I'm not convinced yet. My basic rule is have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear. And I haven't seen anything that convinced me. People have been writing science fiction for a long time. So there are all kinds of unbelievable stories that sound believable when the right person puts them together. So I don't have a real opinion. I can't castigate him because I can't say I can prove that he's wrong.
I believe he's telling the story to how he believes. I believe he's telling the truth to what he's telling. But the thing is, how do we know he's not part of some kind of mind control program? And he's,
people have spread false stories a lot over the man's history, and so I'm withholding judgment. It's in my gray basket, as I say, not black, not white, maybe. I'm anxious to hear more.
Yeah. And
then we'll make a decision then.
So where do we as the human race, as humanity, what do we need to do to get, I hate to use the word full disclosure, but I'm going to use that cliche. What do we need to do, and how far in the future will this happen?
I'm not expecting it any time in the near future. There is a national security aspect. Now, I'm biased. I spent 14 years working on the security on nuclear airplanes, on fission rockets, fusion rockets, all kinds of stuff. And certainly the first country on this planet to be able to build a fusion rocket, let's say, is going to rule the roost. So you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. That's an old rule of the whole classified world. And so I don't know that disclosure is coming anytime soon, unless, there's the inadvertent disclosure, or the guy with a deathbed confession who knows he's going to die. The penalties for breaking security are pretty severe. Mm-hmm. They're not trivial. 2 weeks in the doghouse, no, not at all. So I can see why no major country wants the other country to know what it has learned, to go with what they have learned. And so there's a real battle there. It's nice to say everybody should know everything. I don't believe that. There are terrible things I don't want other people to know. Whether it's poison gas or, we've spent a lot of effort keeping people from getting nuclear weapons. We didn't succeed with North Korea. We did with Iran, maybe. I don't know how long that'll last. But when you look at that guy in North Korea, Does the world want him to have nuclear weapons? Not really. He's not a man with a conscience. He's power hungry, let's say. So I don't see where we're heading for disclosure, but I think we need is a much more educated view of our place in the local neighborhood, of recognition that there's more to learn, new methods of destruction as well as propulsion, and that what we need to be sure of is that we can handle what happens as a result of those new developments. If it's just more nations threatening other nations, what good is that?
Right.
I don't see that as an advantage. So I'm not pushing for disclosure, and the people who are don't seem to understand security and what happens as a result of that. It's not straightforward. It'll be good for everybody to know. Yeah, it's a whole new ball game, but are we ready to handle that? And we haven't done much, as far as I can tell, to set up society in a way that we can handle this kind of thing and keep it from becoming a race to better weaponry instead of a race to betterment for society.
And this last question is more of a two-part question, and it kind of goes along with, is humanity ready to embrace this? First off, part of the two-part question is, if we are already being contacted, or aliens or extraterrestrials are visiting Earth, why is it that most people do not believe in this subject? Is it because
I think that's a false premise.
Or is it because they're interdimensional and it's hard to get the 100% solid proof, if you know what I mean?
Well, I don't think it's true that most people don't believe in flying saucers. I've given over 700 lectures. I've had 11 hecklers, and 2 of them were drunk. And you have that many if you talk about sports, religion, politics, or anything. I think most people do believe, but don't want to admit it. It's
exactly.
As an example of that, I ask at the end of my lectures, more than 700 to date, so I got a solid database, how many people here believe they've seen what I would consider to be a flying saucer, having defined my terms in my lecture. I don't want your name, just raise your hand and we'll point and count. And I do that, and typically it's 10% of the audience, much to their surprise. Everybody thinks they're the only one who's had something. But then I ask, how many of you reported what you saw? 90% of the hands go down. If there's anybody in the military, I ask, or any of you in the military, hands that are still left, and you want to tell us about it. I remember one guy in front of 1,300 people at East Texas State University said, "I can't, they told me not to say anything," which is a great line. And another guy in Indianapolis saying, "They took my pictures." Long silence. So I said, "Look, we'll get your microphone. I'm not asking your name. You don't need to stand up. But I'm sure the audience would like to hear the rest of the story." So everybody claps, and he remained seated. He said that he was piloting a 4-engine aircraft for the Air Force out over the Pacific, another plane 20 miles ahead, radioed back, saucer heading your way, had gun cameras, they took pictures, called the base to which they were going. When they landed, the film was taken. They were debriefed and told never to say anything. And I'll guarantee you 99% of the audience believed that guy. And I've had other stories like that. So I think, I've had a woman say, "How come you raised your hand when he asked about sightings?" "Well, I had one." "Well, you never told me about it." "Well, we were just married and I thought you would laugh at me," and, etc. So the times they are changing. People were beginning to accept more and more. And so what was the second part of that?
Well, do they travel interdimensionally? Is that the reason why they come and go so quick? Because they have the ability to travel, I guess, through different dimensions?
Well, I kind of like fusion propulsion systems. And, there's a misconception here. People can stand rather substantial acceleration for a short period of time. So there was a guy who did a study of putting a man on the moon, a professional astronomer in 1941, Dr. Campbell. Canadian. He was so fed up with all the science fiction nonsense about going to the moon. He did a scientific study to show what's the required initial launch weight of a rocket able to get a man to the moon and back. And he concluded it would be 1,000,000 tons. The Saturn V weighed 3,000 tons and got 3 men to the moon and back. And I'm convinced it did go there. So there's a lot of this false reasoning about how impossible it is. I think people can handle it. I really do. But the problem is the next step. We can't continue to live on a planet subdivided into 200 separate units, each fighting with the other ones. That's no future. We need to spend our effort to join the galactic neighborhood community, if you want, to put it that way. And we don't know how to make that transition. We're not very good at that sort of thing. There have been some wars avoided because of negotiation. There have been others that haven't been avoided. Shoot first, ask questions later. Isn't that the basic rule? So we need, for example, there's well over a dozen PhD theses that have been done about UFOs. And academics don't tell anybody I'm interested in this subject. I lose tenure and stuff like that. There's a fearfulness. Part of it ignorance, part of it arrogance. It's a terrible combination. So I'm an optimist that things will be better, only because we gradually realize that our view of ourselves as the superior being at the top of the system just doesn't hold up. So I'm still an optimist after all these years of looking around. And I know that it's possible to convince most people with the evidence. I've done it. That's what I've been doing. And I have no personal experience. I've never seen a darn flying saucer. But I never saw a neutron or a gamma ray either, and I chased them for 14 years. They're real too. So I'm still an optimist. I don't think something great's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm looking forward to the future.
That's a perfect way to end the conversation. And thank you very much for taking your time, Mr. Freeman.
You're very welcome.